his family.
Now turning our attention, Wally, to this season, as the players gear up, we hear them on Twitter, and we ask our fans on Twitter as well, if you're tracking the tweets at Buffalo Bisons, that's our Twitter handle. We were taking some of the questions from those of you in the room earlier today, and those Mets fans that are all over the place, about your excitement level. And that was one of the first questions that came in. You got a shot to be here in AAA, a great opportunity to really mentor some of the younger players that are right on the cusp of going to the big leagues. What's your excitement level now, just hours away?
Well, I think my excitement is the core of players that we're going to bring in here this year. It's not going to be anything like that you've seen probably in the past couple of years. We've signed a lot of free agents. We got some really young, talented pitching arms that hopefully, if I have any say, they'll all be here, but they won't be. Not at the start anyway. But the core of players that we're going to have, I think the organization went out and got some really quality individuals who've got a lot of not a lot, but they've got major league experience. I think we'll probably have 15 to 20 guys on the ball club this year that has major league experience. So with all the free agents that we signed, I think we really try to sign guys to surround the young core of players that we have. Good people that can help those young players. We just didn't go out and sign free agents just to sign them so they can play. We want them to surround the guys that we think is the future for the New York Mets.
And on that, Valentino Pascucci, a former Bison MVP, will be back, and we're expecting big things from him. Also, some players that had significant injuries. Henry Mejia, all-star caliber pitcher in the minor leagues, working his way through the ranks, went down with Tommy John surgery. Kirk Neuenhuis also had season-ending surgery towards the tail end of last year. How are they progressing, and do you think that there will be some pressure on those guys because they want to make an immediate impact this year?
Well, you know, Neuenhuis, you people have seen him here last year, you got to kind of pull the reins back on him a little bit. He's a bulldog. He wants to play the game hard. I love the way he plays the game. It's the way I expect guys to play the game. Unfortunate for him, he's going to be back here this year. He wants to be in the big leagues in the worst way, and he's going to be in the big leagues. But we're going to have him for a while, and hopefully the players surround themselves around a guy like this and play the game the way that he plays the game, because that's what I expect with Mejia. He's a little farther off. I don't know that he starts the season with us, but it'll be close. You know, it might be May or June. But this is a guy that's, you know, he's a quality pitcher. You know, however the organization decides to use him, if it's a starter or as a reliever, this guy's going to be an impact player in the big leagues at some point in time. And he is healthy, but it's the program that he's going through right now it's going to take a little bit of time still.
We mentioned we were taking questions on Twitter earlier today at Buffalo Bisons. Some of the questions we actually pulled from the box that were out there for you earlier tonight. Mike has asked, he lives right here in Buffalo, on Kirk Neuenhuis and kind of tempering those guys that seem to be more aggressive. That was one of the questions we asked a lot. How could the Bisons be more offensively productive? Do you have something in line to keep that offensive pace and keep that Charlie Hustle mentality up this year?
Well, you do. I mean, you know, if anybody's ever watched me manage, I'm a very aggressive manager. I like to steal bases. I like to hit and run. I like to do it in an educated manner. But I think it's a way to force the defense, put a lot of pressure on the defense, and the defense will make mistakes. So we have the core of players that we've signed that are capable of doing those things, being able to hit and run. We might not have the speed that I would like to have. Every manager would like to have speed and power and great pitching. And the one thing that I think we're going to have is great pitching this year. We're going to have enough power and enough speed. I'd like to have more, but you can only be greedy so long. But these guys are going to be aggressive on the field. I'm a lot more aggressive than previous people have had, the previous managers you've had here. I will take a chance, and I'll take the questions, you know, head on. When one of the reporters asked me, "Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that?" You know, I have my reasons for them. I think they're educated, and you're going to see an aggressive ball club this year. It's one thing that I can promise you, that we're going to be aggressive, and my players are going to learn that they expect to win every day.
Who's the biggest influence on that managerial style for you?
I think probably, you know, I was fortunate. I played for Jimmy Leland, I played for Davey Johnson, I played for Lou Piniella. You know, maybe some of the rant and raving came from Lou Piniella, I don't know. But you know, Joe was a great manager, a veteran manager. I think I'm my own manager. I think I took bits and pieces from all these guys, from Lou Piniella, Jim Leland. I watched the guy Jim Leland when I only played for him for 1 year in 1990. That shows my age, but played for Jimmy for 1 year, and I learned from him, and it was getting to the later part of my career, that he made 25 players happy, and that's not very easy to do. But the way that he intermingled with the players, and especially his bench players, he always got the most out of his role players. And that's one thing that I try to do, keep players sharp. You know, as long as my hands aren't tied where I'm told that I have to play this guy and that guy, which unfortunately happens sometimes, but hopefully not so much here this year in Buffalo.
Do you take your managerial style from your playing days or from what you've learned as a coach and a manager now through the ranks?
I think a little bit of both. You know, I expect players to play the game the way that I played the game. I played 14 years in the major leagues and had to fight for a job every year. And by doing that, there was one thing that you didn't have to learn or you didn't have to be great at, and that was hustling. And as long as you go out and play the game hard, I think that as a player, your managers respect you for that. And I respect my players when they play the game that way.
Speaking of that, we've talked about the excitement that all the players have at this point of spring training because they're just getting started. Spring training is long, even for the players, for the guys that have to cover it. Is it as long for those guys and the guys that are managing and the front office guys and the coaches that are down there?
Hey, I wish it was just as long for the players as it was for the coaches. But, you know, we get to the ballpark about 5:30 in the morning. And a lot of times we get to the ballpark and it's dark and we don't leave until it's dark. So, you know, as coaches, you know, you have so many meetings in spring training. You're always talking about players. You know, you got releases going on every week. Spring training is a tough time, I think, for the coaches. I think it's tougher for the coaches than as players. Of course, we don't have to do all the conditioning stuff. But, you know, the listening to people talk and all those type of things. It's a long day for us. You know, we got 180 players on the minor league side in spring training, and we probably have about 65 to 70 guys on the big league side. We got to talk about each individual, and everybody has their piece to say. And you know, there's guys that people aren't going to like, and there's guys that I'm going to like, guys that other people don't like. And, you know, you sit there and you go back and forth, and on one player, when you got 250 players in camp, and I'm fighting for one guy to be able to stay, it may be 30 minutes on one player, so it's time consuming.
From what you saw last year, especially with those arms that we've seen come up through the ranks, and you had a lot of them in AA, do you think that that is a group that needs to be developed and patient with, or you think that the challenges that lie out there for them, and maybe despite taking some of the early successes, would be better off for their development?
I think that if they were patient, if the organization was patient, you have Vermillion, Harvey, Wheeler, Gorski, you have the same type of pitching that I was fortunate enough to play with when we had Gooden, Fernandez, Darling, Aguilera, and those guys. I think the people in New York have something to really look forward on the pitching side. There's some other holes that need to be filled, just like we had to fill them in the 80s. But if they are patient enough and develop these guys the way that they need to be developed, the way that Frank Cashin did it when he was general manager, there's something to look forward to. Trust me, it's one of the reasons that I stayed, because I'm excited about what's coming.
Those young names that he just mentioned, compared to some of the great names in Mets history and in baseball history as well, made a lot of the faces in this room just go, oh my, because that's pretty high accolade as well. What were those guys like, taking the ball every time for you as a player, and that mentality that you had, knowing that they could get you a win every night out?
Well, their mentality was they weren't going to lose, and that's what we have to try to instill in our players, and that's what the Vermillions, the Harveys, I see the same things in these guys that I've seen in the Goodens and the Darlings and those guys. But you know, if it's done properly, and I think that the organization, I think that Alderson, the new regime they brought in last year, I know that we've got a big pay cut this year and all that kind of thing. I think they're doing it the right way, just because we're trying to build from within the organization, so we have something that's ongoing for years to come.
As a player that had to fight for a job every year like you did, I think that that has to resonate with the players that are in the system as well. Take a guy like we saw in Buffalo last season, and Chris Schwinden, who made such an immediate splash with his success, got a shot to go up in the big leagues as well. What does that do for a player that's trying to work his way up, knowing that there's not this big roadblock in front of him?
Well, I think it shows that hard work pays off. You know, I mean, Schwinden started with me in Binghamton last year at AA, and I had him for he wasn't even a starting pitcher. He couldn't start, supposedly, in AA. I thought he could, but, you know, he comes here to Buffalo. He's your only All-Star, I think, last year. You know, it's a great story. I mean, I think that it shows the hard work pays off, and everybody has an opportunity, everybody has a chance, and I think that, you know, we try to instill that in players. Some get it, some don't, but But if you work hard enough, you know, you can make your dream come true.
You're going to get an opportunity as well to work with a couple of guys on your staff and talk about that and the changeover that we're going to have here in Buffalo. Not only a new manager, but we're going to have some new faces on your staff as well.
Oh, no doubt. Mark Brewer's going to be the pitching coach, former Dodger, has been with the organization for quite a few years. Very good baseball mind, good pitching coach. Knows how to not only teach mechanics, but he's fortunate enough that he has the ability to teach pitchers how to get outs. And some pitchers have arms where they throw 98, some throw 88. But he has the ability to teach pitchers how to get hitters out. And I think that that's very important for a pitching coach. And Mark definitely has those abilities to do that. Greer will be our hitting coach. I don't know a whole lot about him. I know that the players talk really highly of him, the guys on the minor league side, and even on the big league side. Daniel Murphy is a George Greer big-time fan. He thinks he's the guy that got him over the hump. And you know, George is a guy he's by the book. He's a workaholic. You know, George isn't here. I think he's 67, but he really knows baseball. And so I think I got a great staff. I know that these guys are going to work hard and try to develop these players. Our goal is to get these players to the big leagues and just fine tune them. You know, we're trying to polish these players, but I will tell you this: in the process, I expect to win in Buffalo. There's without question. I've won 7 championships. I've won at every level in the minor leagues and the major leagues, and I expect to win again this year in Buffalo.
What's the best recipe for you? Yeah, absolutely. For you, the clubhouse this season looks like it has some of those young prospect arms, some very good and up-and-coming players as well, but also a nice mix of those veterans. What's the best recipe for a clubhouse success?
Well, I think clubhouse success is, you know, you have the Scoochies, you have those guys to manage your clubhouse. You know, as a manager, it shouldn't be your job to manage that clubhouse. You want to have veteran guys that can manage those younger players and even manage the veteran players. And I think that's one of the reasons that he's back. Not only that, but he led this team in RBIs and home runs last year. He's a good offensive player. You know, he's gonna not play first base as much as you probably seen him play last year, but he will be in the lineup every day, DH probably. But you know, you need leaders like that in the clubhouse. It's just the same way. You know, I go back to my playing days, and I go back to Gary Gardner. He's a leader in the clubhouse. Keith Hernandez was a leader on the field, and you've got to have those guys to create championship ball clubs. And Faz, he's one of those guys.
A couple of getting to know Wally Backman questions, by the way. We know you're web savvy because you've referenced some of those YouTube clips that we may or may not have been watching. I'll ask you about the phone in a second because that's interesting. Do you tweet?
No, I don't tweet. I don't tweet. And I don't even Facebook. And somebody that said that there's a Facebook one. We're I don't know.
So there's no tweeting, there's no Facebooking, but there's the phone. Can you hold that up there?
Hey, that's my ring. It's a motorcycle. It's a Harley. It's my son. Can we see your son? Oh. Wally Jr., what do you want? I don't know. I'm doing some interview here in front of a bunch of people here.
Yeah. He's talking to his son.
Yeah, tell him hi.
Hey.
Can I have your autograph?
Well, they didn't hear you, so they don't like you either. All right, I'll talk to you later.
You used to play in the minors, I'm sorry.
A motorcycle ring for Wally Backman. Watch out on the roads, that's him, tooling around. Big handlebars, right?
Yes.
Wally Backman, thanks so much for joining us here tonight.
Thank you.
Best of luck this season.
Hey, Wally!
Wally Backman once again right here. We've got some door prizes to give away.
Door prizes.
As the night continues, as